Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. We're Big Bad and back at the Puzzle Factory with Mr. Dax Lanier. How are you?
Good, thanks, Warren. How are you?
You know, good, not bad for a very, very wet, not necessarily cold, but a wet
London day.
London day, yeah. So let's hear a little bit about your journey.
Sure.
You're clearly not from these shores. So.
No, you probably guessed by the accent. I'm Antipodean from Australia originally, so so I guess we start at the start. Yeah, so I grew up in a very musical house. Nobody played any instruments, but there was always music playing. My grandfather was a radio DJ, and there was just, like I said, always music around. And it was kind of, I guess, as music does for many of us, it kind of gets into our blood when we're young and just kind of goes from there. So, I was about 3 years old, I think, and my parents took me for a visit to a radio station. Mm-hmm. And I think it was at that moment that I fell in love with, all the dials and faders and buttons, because apparently they had to pull me back from pushing all the buttons, and I think that's probably where it happened. And then came home and I made myself, I flipped a chair upside down to make a desk, and then used a paint roller as a microphone.
Oh, wow.
That's how much I guess it really influenced me, yeah.
So you went from, because obviously now you build pretty much everything. When we did the studio tour, which of course there'll be a link down below, we saw all of this wonderful things that you built. In this room alone, I think there's the refrigerator microphone storage area, which is incredible and secure, and you've built all of these 19-inch racks. You've got all the microphones, the stands that you built in the live room. I mean, I'm scratching the surface of all the incredible
You're too kind, thank you.
And the actual studio itself from an empty building into this. Mm-hmm. So you've always interlinked those two things together?
Yeah. So really, I've always been building things, and I didn't come from a particularly affluent family or anything like that. So it's not like, oh, you're interested in music, son? Here, have a studio. It was never anything like that. It was something that really built up over time. And so if there was something that I wanted, I would generally end up trying to build it myself and that sort of thing. So, I mean, when I was 10 years old, I started DJing at my schools. I was doing the whole school discos in the lower school, the primary school, for a few years. Ended up doing some, like, my father is a chef and he ran a few catering companies, and ended up getting booked to do weddings and 40th birthday parties and stuff like that. I was 11 years old, and then, so DJ Dax was at the time.
DJ Dax?
Yeah, a name I haven't used in a long, long time.
So is Dax your full given name?
Yeah, that's right. My full real birth name. I got very cool parents, so yeah.
Just because I'm an idiot, is Dax from anything? Is it?
It's funny you ask that. My mother's German, my father's French. So when I was born, people said, "Oh, did you name him after the town in the south of France?" And I'm like, there's a town in the south of France called Dax? They looked it up, and sure enough, there is. So no, it wasn't that. And then sometime later, someone said, "Oh, you must have named him after the German stock exchange, Strong." I'm like, no, not
German stock exchange.
Yeah, the DAX. Yeah, no, not that
this
either.
This is my friend Footsie.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, it was from a book called The Adventurers, something that both of my parents had read, and they really loved the name. The lead character's initials were DAX, and so
I see.
Yeah, so in the story, his friends called him Dax, and they liked it, and it stuck. So that was it.
I was assuming it was a shortened version or a nickname or something like that.
No, my full real birth name.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, like I said, cool parents. So, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your time in Australia before you came here.
Sure, absolutely. So, we were talking about music being, gets into you at a young age, and then making things is engineering, really. And so I've always loved technology. I've always loved music, and the two of those kind of meet perfectly in the middle at audio engineering. And that's just kind of where it went. So when I was young, I was about 13, almost. I think it was slightly underage. I got a retail job at a second-hand store. And so, of course, they'd have stuff coming in every week, and thankfully I'd get first pick of a lot of the things. And so I built up a very small kit of a few, pieces of equipment. My first mics were a couple of looking back on it now, very beat up SM58s. And I built a little 2-channel microphone preamplifier, and I used that to just record for my friends' bands in high school. I've been in a few bands myself. I've been playing drums since about 13, somewhere around there, 13, 14 years old, that sort of thing. And just kind of went on from there. Started, like I said, recording friends' bands in high school, And yeah, just kind of kept progressing. And eventually I got to a point where my parents saw that I was quite interested in this. They said, look, we'll give you half of the garage. We'll section it off and you can have half of it. And they had a builder friend come in and line it all and do that. And I was very keenly watching him while he was doing the building because I'd never seen carpentry.
How old were you?
Would have been 15 or 16 or something, I think, about that sort of age.
Great. You do have cool parents, yeah?
Yeah, I do. I really do. So I had this little space. It was a band rehearsal space, but also because I'd been, building up a little bit of equipment, I was able to do some recording there as well, and so record my own band and that sort of stuff. And it just kind of went on from there and through. So finished high school, and I went into working for a company that sold basically like Maplin or Radio Shack over in the States, where you don't really get those anymore. They're stores that sell electronic components, not just like electronics being TVs and fridges and stuff like that, but actual components.
I remember those, yeah.
Yeah, it's really sad. There's so few of them around these days. It's a really lost art, I think. And so basically I had a retail job after high school working in one of those sort of stores, and then got poached to work at a company that was doing large-scale video advertising screens in supermarkets and shopping centres and train stations and all that. And so I was working that job and I was never really happy with it. It was just kind of a thing that I would just go to every day. And this is around 2000, I think. And after a particularly bad day at work, I'm like, what if I just give this studio thing a try? I've got a bit of gear, and I'd always kind of, rather than buying the cheapest and quickest thing that I could buy immediately, I'd save up and then buy the right things,
What did you have in those days? What were the things?
So there was an audio interface that I saved for so many years, for like, it must have been a year, I think it would have been, of saving up for it. And it was a 2 channels, a French company, I can't remember the name, but it was 2 channels. And that was a step up from the old Sound Blaster, but not much of a step up. It still had RCA inputs, no XLR or jack or anything like that. And then at some point there was a company, I think they were called, not Wave Labs, but something like that. And they had this 8-channel interface. It was like a teal color and 8 sockets on the front. XLRs, you still had to have your own preamps. There were no preamps in there. And had a big card that went in the computer as well. And I had 8 channels. And I again saved up all my money, and I got this console was made by a company called SEK, S-E-C-K. I think they're a Swedish company maybe. And
maybe. I remember SEK though.
Yeah, it was a music store locally, and someone had done a trade-in on it. And and the guys there were really lovely. And the guy who owned it was like, okay, we'll do a lay-by for you. And so I was, saving up, paying it off, and that sort of thing. And then I got this console with direct outs, and then I was able to do a bit of that sort of thing. And then basically, I'd gotten to a point, and I was kind of like, I don't like my job. Why don't I just give this thing a try? Give a studio thing a try, see how it works. And 24 years later, here we are. It's So
tell us a little bit about the success you had in Australia and what got you to come over here.
Sure, of course. So I'd worked with a lot of different bands in Australia. It was everything. There were a lot of metal bands around at the time. Like, this is early 2000s, so as soon as I say early 2000s metal, you know exactly what kind of bands I'm talking about. And yes, it was really big, and so I was recording a lot of that stuff. But then there were a lot of other things. There was a bit of jazz, bit of hip hop, bit of electronic music, mostly a lot of rock and heavy metal in the early days. And it just kind of went on from there. And then I guess it would have been sometime like 2005, 2004. I'd been working with bands, and they would come in and I'd record them. And I was the engineer. Right? And then I'd realize that someone would be having trouble with something, or they weren't sure how to get from point A to point B, or I'd have an idea for a part. I'm like, hey guys, what do you think about this? And I'd be introducing these ideas, and it wasn't until many years later that I understood what a producer was. And like, I've been producing all this time. I'm not just an engineer, I'm a producer as well. And then, as many people start out mastering their own mixes because, the band doesn't have the budget for it. For many years, I was like, well, I'm not a mastering engineer, but I can do the mastering. I can take care of that for you. So yeah, we don't have any extra budget or that sort of thing. And then after many, many years of saying, I'm not a mastering engineer, at some point, I don't know, like 2007, 2008 or something, I stopped saying, but I'm not a mastering engineer. It's like I was doing work just as good as anybody else's stuff. It's like, why am I telling people I'm not a mastering engineer? So I feel that might have been a bit of a, just like I got used to things in one particular way, and to saying, oh, but that's not me, but yeah, it kind of moved on from there. And then, so I was in Sydney originally. About 2009, I moved to Canberra and had various studios there.
Canberra, better opportunities?
Yeah, so Canberra is a very different lifestyle down there. My plan was to study systems engineering with mechanical as the mainstream to that. Systems engineering being like you would oversee, the mechanical engineers, the electrical engineers, civil, mechanical, all that sort of thing. Started studying at the ANU, the Australian National University, and I very quickly found, like, I did a year full-time of study and full-time running the studio, and it was just too much. Like I couldn't. It was too much to do both. So in the second year, I went down to part-time for the study, and then still full-time on the studio. And then even that, there were two things that led me to kind of give it away. And one of them was I had too much studio stuff going on. I just didn't have the time to be able to really devote to the university. And the other part of it was, I discovered fairly quickly that it wasn't really what it seemed to be on the outside. It wasn't what I wanted to study, and I realized afterwards that what I would love to study was a degree in inventing, which doesn't really exist. And I wonder if inventing can be taught, or if it's something that you can always get better at everything. I truly believe anyone can improve on anything, but whether you can teach inventing, I don't truly know. But
all I can think of is chitty chitty bang bang.
Yeah,
for those that know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm seeing steam shooting and cogs turning, all that. Yeah. So in Canberra, I had various studios. Some were in premises that I was either renting by the day from people, or I had my own premises for some time. And for a lot of it, I was working from, I'd have a bedroom, like I'd have a house. Real estate's a lot cheaper in Australia, so I'd have a house and one room would be set up as a dedicated
cheaper
studio.
Than London. Wow. What a surprise.
Well, I think it's all changed now. It's probably all expensive over there now, but at least at the time, it was it wasn't untenable to have a separate room set up as a studio space. And I did lots of mixing from there, some fair bit of mastering from there as well. And around 2010, I started a service I call Mix Direction, which is basically, because I was getting a lot of tracks for mastering, some of them would come from other studios, some of them would come from people just working at home in their own bedrooms, and they'd ask me for mastering, and then I'd end up sending lists about, hey, I've got an idea of some things you could improve on the mix, and I'd send back notes, and it became this extra, like a add-on service basically that I would do, it just kind of went from there. So launched that, like I said, about 2010. And then in 2012, I had the honour I was awarded Producer of the Year in two separate competitions, one in Sydney and one in Canberra. Also in 2012, I was awarded a Winston Churchill Fellowship, so for my engineering and
I don't know what that
production.
Is. I should do.
Well, obviously you know the name Winston Churchill.
I know Winnie, yes.
Yep. So they're set up in Australia and also the UK, and basically. Best way to describe it would be to tell you the project. So what I did is I put together a proposal of how to bring, it's all about bringing knowledge back to Australia and then disseminating that knowledge around Australia. And so I put together a project. My idea for the project was I wanted to go and study with some of the world's best and do some research through Europe as well at some studios, and then come back and then disseminate that. So I was fortunate enough to have a week with Michael Brouwer in the south of France, and then 16 days traveling around various studios and sitting in on sessions and having chats with people and all that stuff.
Lovely.
And then, as if that wasn't enough, came back down to for another session with the lovely Joe Ciccarelli.
Joe's a wonderful guy.
Yeah, super lovely guy.
One great producer, but I think one of the best engineers ever.
Oh yeah, he's a talented.
Sounds are so insane.
Exactly, yeah, talented on so many levels, so many brilliant records he's done.
Yeah. Not to take away from his production, which is great too.
No, of course.
But you just bring up a record of his and just put up all the faders and go,
Yeah, what needs to be done here?
What needs to be done?
Yeah.
I'm always surprised when somebody else mixes his albums. I'm like, anyway, that's a whole other story.
And if that wasn't enough, I then came over to London. I had 2 weeks in the studio with Alan Moulder and Flood.
Wonderful.
While they were working on the Foals album Holy Fire.
Wow.
And it was amazing. It's super lovely guys. It was great to be able to sit in on that. And actually, funny story. Speaking of building things, it was about a few days in, and Alan turned to his assistant John Catlin and said, "Oh, John, we got to get rid of this bloody desk." He was referring to the desk that he had his the work console, not mixing console,
Sure.
work console with his monitor and keyboard and stuff like that. And I thought, well, I was sitting there just thinking, because obviously, I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. I'm sitting in the back of the room. I'm being very quiet, not getting in the way. And then at one point I'd said to him, "Alan, have you ever thought about getting a custom desk made?" And John jumps in and goes, "Oh, I've tried plenty of times. I've asked heaps of carpenters and no one's ever got back to me." I said, "Well, did you ever send them any plans?" He said, "Oh, no, I don't know how to draw up technical drawings." I said, "Well, I do. I studied that with my mechanical engineering." And so Alan spun around and was like, "Yeah, okay, do you want to design?" I said, "Sure, I'll design something." So sketched it all out, drew it up, took measurements of what asked him what he wanted, drew up this desk. And then he said, "Great, that looks wonderful." And I said, "Do you want me to get it built?" He said, "Do you think you could do that?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And so I think it was the second last day before I left. No, it was the last day before I left. I'd gotten organised everything. One place had fabricated all the steelwork, had it shipped across London to get it powder coated, had the timber done at another place.
Wow.
Alan gives me his car to drive across town and all of this sort of thing. And put it all in the back and brought it back to Salt and Battery and assembled the whole thing there. And I was just almost finished with it all. And then I thought, I better go grab some lunch. I walked out and I hear this dum, 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 dum. And then the door flies open and Alan goes, "Oh, mate, that looks deep. Effing Lux." And anyway, about a couple of weeks later, I organised for a company in over here to make up a little plaque. I designed it. It said "The Deluxe," presented to Alan Moulder by Dax Linear, and got the head of tech there, Barney. I was like, "Can you put this on? Like, just put it on the back or something like that, out of the way, Anyway, it's right on the side in prime position now, and and he loves the thing. So it was really lovely. So yeah, actually,
Nice.
Yeah. So
now I want to go and check it out.
yeah, go do it. Yeah, so fast forward to after coming back from the fellowship, part of the deal with that is I needed to write a report, and I think it was like 2,000 pages or something. Anyway, in the end, I wrote about 2,000 words, not pages. Gosh, sorry.
That would be
That would be a manuscript indeed, yeah. I ended up writing 7,000 words on this thing and then submitting and all that. And my mentor for the project, because you needed to pick a project mentor, it's an amazing guy named Greg Simmons, who I met through the audio college that I went to in 2001. He was head of audio at the time, and we stayed in really close contact. Lovely, lovely guy. Does amazing stereo recordings. He travels all around Southeast Asia, kind of capturing traditional songs, because a lot of this stuff gets lost these days. Kids are going to the city, and all these songs that have been around for generations are disappearing. So he goes and documents this stuff for posterity. So yeah, anyway, so I showed him the report. Said, "Could you have a look at this before I submit it?" He said, "Yep, sure, great. It looks great. You should submit this. You should send this to Audio Technology magazine. I think they'd be interested." I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." He was actually the founding editor. He'd since sold it many years earlier, but he was the founding editor of that magazine in Australia. So he still had ties to them. So he organised an email, sent it through. And from that, I ended up getting my own columns, which was based around, the whole idea of it was, how do you get that analog sound in the box? Because I've been proudly in the box. I started analog, of course, but been proudly in the box for many, many years now. And my thesis, I guess you'd call it, was on how, what's happening to our signals.
And which magazine was this for?
Audio Technology magazine.
Nice.
Yeah. And my thesis, which you can access through the Winston Churchill Fellowship website, it's all available. I think it's a PDF there. You can just grab it if anyone's curious about that. Just kind of shows everything I learned, all the things I learned. And one of the main focuses was, what is happening to our signals when they go through a piece of equipment? Why is it that we like analog? We're talking about the saturation, the subtle compression, the harmonics are added, all of these things. And I talk about
the randomness. Exactly.
And the things that we like about analog, things that are good, and what are some things we don't like? Noise, crosstalk is not great either. There's things we can attain, we should be trying to attain, and things we should be trying to avoid about analog.
Sure.
Yeah. I did this series of columns through the magazine. And then several years later, just working with a bunch of different bands and all sorts of things, at some point, I'd always, as I mentioned at the top, my parents are both European. I'd always said, I see myself moving to Europe in a few years. But a few years is always, it's like tomorrow. It's always another day away. You know, you move ahead and it's like it's still a few years away. So, in 2015, I made my mind up. It's like, right, this is it. 2016, I'm doing this. I'm going to move. And at that point, I literally packed my entire life in a shipping container early 2016, April 2016, sent it to the other side of the planet and built the studios that you've seen in the tour.
Which there will be a link down below if you haven't yet seen it. Lots of people have. It was a very popular video.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Yeah. It's lovely to share. It's lovely to share that. It was some really lovely comments as well. It's been great and some good questions in there as well. I love answering the questions on those things as well.
Well, we shall get you to answer more. And
sure,
leave questions and comments down below.
Absolutely.
We'll get Dax to answer even more questions.
Yeah, more than happy to do that. Yeah. I guess from there it's been. I think kind of we know where we are from there. So we sure. pick up from at this point in time we kind of pick up from the tour video. So it took a while to find premises that was suitable. You know,
sure.
right location and right amount of size. Also didn't cost £1 million a week in rent. All of that sort of thing. And built this handcrafted this studio, which has been it was a real effort of blood, sweat, and tears without any exaggeration on any three of those. They were.
I believe it.
Yeah, there were moments of very great, very big highs, and then some moments of really low lows of just desperation of just different things is going wrong or one thing after another. But you know, I think this is
all that matters, and it's incredible. It's a very beautiful studio.
Thank you. Yeah. I think perseverance really is the takeaway from that. You know, I
was going to ask: did the fridge come first, then the colour? For the rest of it?
Well, good question.
Or was that completely accidental?
Well, I was looking around. I knew what I wanted in terms of a retro fridge because I'd seen Smeg and Gorenji both have a bunch of retro styled fridges, and I know they come in a bunch of cool colours. There's like a really nice like seafoam blue. What do they call it? Seafoam green. Yeah, see a lot of tellies in that, Telecasters in that sort of colour.
Wonderful colour.
They're a great colour for a fridge as well. And then of course that kind of deep burgundy red and I guess many parts of the studio.
So is that a Smeg then?
It's a Gorenji, that particular one, but it's the same. Yeah, they're very very similar. Yeah. I'm sure the fridge connoisseurs will be writing horrible comments in the bottom.
Maybe I'm not a connoisseur of much. So.
I'm not a connoisseur of fridges. Let's say that. So basically, while I was building the studio, you get once you start a few things, you kind of get into a rhythm. You know, like once you start building a wall, it's like, okay, well, we know where the walls are. You don't need a lot of brain power once you've started that to kind of keep going with them. And so my mind would kind of wander onto other things and thinking about, I'd start planning out the next stages. I knew I had a vision for the whole project, which was an overarching kind of idea of I wanted it to be this comfortable, professional, inspiring environment. That was really something. I don't do things the way necessarily everybody else would do them, and I wanted my studio to really. It's not even wanted to. It's just naturally a reflection of me. Like I wanted to just have it the way I wanted to have it. The way I thought would be a good way to do it. And who cares about convention? It's to me more important is convention is not necessarily bad, but it shouldn't be followed just for the sake of just why do you do it that way? Oh, that's how we've always done it. Yep. I feel like that's the way to a quick death of anything is we keep doing it that way because that's how we've always done it.
Sure.
That really kind of puts us where we are right now.
Amazing. Well, Dax, thank you ever so much.
It's been lovely having a chat with you, Warren. Absolutely.
Great having a chat with you too. Thanks for telling us about your journey. Of course, any comments and questions down below. There'll be a link to Dax's studio and of course the previous video and a multi-track mix session he did, followed by another one coming soon. Stay tuned. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Hello.
Bye.
Farewell. Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir. Adios. Goodbye. Ciao.